right? I mean, it's just a feeling, really. It's not a big, it wasn't a big project I'm planning.
Ziggy Marley has finally broken his silence, and what he's revealing now could change everything you thought you knew. For years, a man named Fabian Marley claimed to be Bob Marley's firstborn son. He looked the part, sounded the part, even carried the Marley name. But was he really family? Ziggy wasn't convinced until the DNA tests surfaced. Why did Ziggy hold back for so long? And how will this explosive truth impact the Marley legacy forever? Let's break it all down, because what comes next is wild, shocking, and everything you didn't expect. Who is Ziggy Marley? Ziggy Marley, born David Nesta Marley on October 17, 1968, grew up in Kingston, Jamaica. As the oldest son of reggae legend Bob Marley and his wife Rita, Ziggy spent much of his childhood in Trenchtown, one of Kingston's poorest neighborhoods. His father worked hard to make his band, the Wailers, which later became Bob Marley and the Wailers. Ziggy's mom, Rita, who was also a gifted singer, joined the group in the mid-70s. When Ziggy was young, he also spent some time in Wilmington, Delaware, where his younger brother Stephen was born in 1972. He already had an older sister named Cedella and an older half-sister, Sharon, from his mother's earlier relationship. By 1978, Ziggy had 7 more half-siblings, all from his parents' relationships outside their marriage. Stephanie from his mother, and Robert, Rohan, Karen, Julian, Kai Mani, and Damian from his father. In 1979, Ziggy, Cedella, Stephen, and Sharon came together to record their very first song, Children Playing in the Streets. Their dad wrote the music to shed light on the harsh poverty that many children in Jamaica faced. All the money earned from the song was donated to the United Nations Children's Fund to help support children in need. After their dad passed away in 1981, Ziggy and Stephen performed together at Bob's funeral. Soon after, they joined forces with Sharon and Cedella to form the group called the Melody Makers. All 4 sang, but Ziggy also played the guitar, an instrument his dad had taught him to play. Stephen played both guitar and drums. Later that same year, as the Melody Makers, they released their next single, What a Plot. In 1985, the Melody Makers released their first album, Play the Game Right, but it didn't get much attention. Their next album, Hey World, in 1986, had the same result. It didn't gain widespread popularity, despite receiving many positive reviews. The group changed their name to Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers, and in 1988, released Conscious Party with Virgin Records. This album helped them reach a much wider audience. Produced by Chris France and Tina Weymouth from the Talking Heads, the album blended reggae with pop and rock sounds, making it fresh and exciting. Ziggy took charge of most of the songwriting, giving the songs a bright, positive vibe, while still keeping them relevant and meaningful. One track, Tomorrow People, really connected with listeners and became a hit. The album performed well on both the pop, rhythm, and blues, and hip-hop charts in the United States. Then, in 1989, the group won the Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album. With their next album, One Bright Day in 1989, Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers scored another hit with the critics and won their 2nd Grammy in a row for Best Reggae Album. Even though it was well-loved, the album didn't sell as well as their previous one. Throughout the 1990s, the group released several more albums, including Fallen as Babylon in 1997, which also won a Grammy. After that, they eventually decided to go their separate ways and disbanded. Since Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers broke up, Ziggy has kept the family's musical legacy alive, building his own reputation as one of reggae's top artists. In 2003, he released his first solo album, Dragonfly. The album featured several guest artists, such as Flea and John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It had a strong mix of rock and hip-hop sounds. The songs also dug into social issues, politics, and personal stories. In 2006, Ziggy released Love Is My Religion, which won the Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album that year. He continued to produce critically praised music, both as a solo artist and in collaboration with family members and well-known performers like Donna Summer. In 2016, his self-titled album, Ziggy Marley, earned him his 7th Grammy for Best Reggae Album, setting a new record in that category. Family and relationships. Beyond his music, Ziggy Marley founded the URGE organization, which stands for Unlimited Resources Giving Enlightenment. The group focuses on helping children living in poverty. Ziggy married Orly Age in December 2004. Together they have 4 children: Judah, Gideon, Abraham, and Isaiah. He is also the father of 3 other children from previous relationships: Daniel, who goes by Bambaata, Justice, and Zuri. The oldest of Ziggy's half-siblings is Sharon Marley. Bob Marley adopted Rita's daughter, Sharon, who was born on November 23, 1964. He officially became her father after he and Rita got married in 1966. Sharon started making music when she was just 12. In 1979, she formed the band Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers with 3 of her siblings. They toured around the world, released 10 albums, and won several Grammy Awards. Sharon also helped run her brother's record label, Ghetto Youth United. However, her work hasn't been limited to music. Sharon also has a deep passion for caregiving and education. She started the Total Care Learning Center and supports the Montessori approach to teaching. At home, she raises her 4 children: Donisha, Inglemar, Matthew, and Peter Shane. Next is Cedella Marley. Cedella was born to Bob and Rita Marley on August 23, 1967, in Kingston, Jamaica. She was a member of the Melody Makers and later explored other creative paths. She acted in movies like The Mighty Quinn in 1989, with Denzel Washington and Joey Breaker in 1993. After the Melody Makers wrapped up in 2002, Cedella took on a leadership role as CEO of her father's record label, Tough Gong International. She also turned her attention to fashion design. Alongside her own clothing lines, Cedella teamed up with Puma to create Jamaica's track and field uniforms for the 2012 Olympics. That included designing outfits for Usain Bolt and Olympic-inspired gear for fans. "I said this to Usain, it's the first time Dad is actually going to the Olympics," Cedella recalled in a video on the Bob Marley YouTube channel, "and you're going to be wearing him on your shoulder." That wasn't the last time Cedella worked with athletes in a big way. In 2014, she donated to Jamaica's women's soccer team, the Reggae Girls, through the Bob Marley Foundation. Her support saved the team from being completely overwhelmed. Although the team faced setbacks and eventually disbanded, Cedella brought them back in 2016. Just 3 years later, the Reggae Girls made history as the first women's soccer team from the Caribbean to qualify for the FIFA Women's World Cup. "It's a choice that the girls have made to play, and we should give them an even field to go out and kick the ball," Cedella told ESPN in 2019. "Football is freedom." That's a quote from Bob Marley. Cedella shares her father's sharp business sense and creative spirit. In 1993, she married David Minto. Together they have 2 sons, Skip and Soul Rebel. Next is Robert Marley. Robert Robbie was born on May 16, 1972, to Bob Marley and Pat Williams. He has mostly stayed out of the spotlight, but in 2012, he opened up to Collider about his father. Robbie described Bob as quiet, patient, strict, and said he was a teacher and a father, not just to us, but to all. Robbie also called being Bob's son a true blessing. That same year, Robbie shared that his favorite song by his father is Redemption Song. After Robert, Rohan Anthony Marley was born in Kingston on May 19, 1972, to Bob Marley and Janet Hunt. He played college football at the University of Miami, where his teammates included Dwayne Johnson and Ray Lewis. Later, he went on to play professionally in the Canadian Football League for the Ottawa Rough Riders. In 2009, Rohan founded Marley Coffee, an organic coffee farming business. 2 years later, he launched the House of Marley, a line of headphones and audio gear. Rohan has been married twice. His first marriage was to Geraldine Cawley. Together they have 2 children, Nicholas Nico Marley, a former NFL linebacker, and a daughter named Eden. From 1996 to 2009, Rohan was in a relationship with Lauryn Hill. They share 5 children: Zion David, Sela Louise, Joshua Omaru, John Nesta, and Sarah. In 2019, Rohan married model Barbara Fialho. They have a daughter together. In 2014, Rohan told Rolling Stone that his father inspired him to make the world better for the people who come after him. "You don't want to do things just for you. My father did not do that. If it's positive, we can do it. When you have more, you can do more. That's sustainability," he said. "That's my father. There are no limitations. When I stop, it should be greater than I. The ones that come after, I should be greater than I." Stephen Robert Nesta Marley is Ziggy's sibling. Stephen was born to Bob and Rita Marley on April 20th, 1972 in Wilmington, Delaware. He grew up in Kingston, Jamaica. At just 7 years old, Stephen joined his siblings in Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers. He became the group's main instrumentalist, added vocals to several tracks, and infused their music with a dance hall vibe. In 1999, Stephen produced Chant Down Babylon, a remix and cover album of his father's songs. The album included the hit Turn Your Lights Down Low, performed by Lauryn Hill. More recently, in 2022, he utilized his producing talents again for Celebrating Nina, a reggae tribute to Nina Simone, which featured his sister, Cedella, and other artists. Like his brother Ziggy, Stephen has earned many awards, including 8 Grammy wins from 11 nominations. Stephen is also a father to several children with different women. Sadly, in December 2022, his 31-year-old son, Joseph Joe Mersa Marley, who was also a musician, passed away. Next is Karen Marley. Karen is the daughter of Bob Marley and Janet Bowen. She was born in London in 1973 and raised first by her great-grandparents in Jamaica. Later, she was cared for by Rita Marley, whom Karen has called one of her maternal figures. Karen is a fashion designer who prefers to keep a low profile. In 2014, she told Rolling Stone, "Sometimes when I speak about my dad, it is a little touchy for me. I wanted to just live without someone going, 'Oh, there's Karen Marley.' I have to put my name out there because I opened a business. I'm not a musician. I like to be a little bit under the radar." On International Women's Day in March 2022, she launched her eco-friendly brand, By Karen Marley. Next is Stephanie Marley. Stephanie was born to Rita Marley and a man named Ital on August 17, 1974, and was later adopted by Bob Marley. In the late 1990s, Stephanie attended the University of Western Ontario in Canada, where she earned a bachelor's degree in psychology. About 10 years later, she helped open the Marley Resort and Spa in Nassau, Bahamas, where she designed the hotel's interiors alongside her sister, Cedella, according to Vanity Fair. In 2013, Stephanie launched a modeling and talent agency called Be Unique, pronounced Be Unique. The company represented some of her nieces and nephews, including Kaimani's children, Christian and Mana, Ziggy's daughter, Zuri, and Stephen's children, Stephen and Summer, as reported by the Jamaica Observer. Stephanie also served as the director of the Rita Marley Foundation after years of working with her father's organizations. "It's a way of life. That's the way we were raised. I strongly believe the fame my parents earned, the success they have achieved, is because they're gifted with kindness," Stephanie told a crowd at her alma mater in 2015. After Stephanie is Julian Ricardo Marley, who was born in London to Bob Marley and Lucy Pounder on June 4, 1975. He grew up splitting his time between Jamaica and the United Kingdom. Mostly self-taught, Julian learned to play guitar, bass, keyboard, and drums. He credits his partly British upbringing for much of his success. "I feel privileged to be part of the musical roots that my father laid in England," he told 247 magazine before his 2010 UK tour. "I look forward to relating the cultural gifts and musical creations that he has bestowed on me." Julian has released several albums, starting with his debut in 1996. Even though he works in the music industry, Julian says he doesn't feel pressured to live up to his father's fame. In 2024, Julian won his first Grammy for Best Reggae Album. He had also earned 2 earlier nominations. Next is Kaimani Marley. Kaimani was born on February 26, 1976, to Bob Marley and table tennis champion Anita Belnavis. He is a reggae artist born in Falmouth, Jamaica, but raised mainly in Miami. Kaimani was only 5 years old when Bob lost his life to cancer. "I have one memory of my father just being in the countryside, with him and my older brother Stephen," he told the Las Vegas Review-Journal in 2022. "I keep that memory very dear to my heart." That memory inspired much of Kaimani's music, including the song Dear Dad. Although he got into music in high school, Kaimani focused more on sports growing up, playing soccer and football competitively. After a producer in Jamaica, who had worked with his father, noticed him, Kaimani released his debut album, Like Father Like Son, in 1996. Since then, he has been nominated for a Grammy for his album Many More Roads. Kaimani has also tried acting, starring in One Love and Shadas, and appearing in the 2016 Nick Cannon movie King of the Dance Hall. The last on the list is Damian Robert Nesta Marley. Damian Jr. Gong was born on July 21st, 1978, to Bob Marley and jazz singer Cindy Breakspear. His nickname comes from Bob's own nickname, Tough Gong. Damian started making music at just 13 years old with a band called The Shepherds, but the group broke up after a few years. In 1996, he released his debut album, Mr. Marley, on the family's Tough Gong label. His brother Stephen Coe produced the album. His second album, Halfway Tree, also co-produced by Stephen, came out in 2001. It won the Grammy for Best Reggae Album in 2002, the same year Kaimani was nominated for Many More Roads. Damian made history at the 2006 Grammys by becoming the first reggae artist to win 2 Grammys in one ceremony. He won the Best Reggae Album Award for Welcome to Jamrock and the Best Urban and Alternative Performance Award for the album's title track. He was also the first reggae artist to win the Urban and Alternative Performance Award. He has worked on several high-profile songs for other artists, including Cruise Control by Mariah Carey, Bam by Jay-Z, Liquor Store Blues by Bruno Mars, and Now That You Got It by Gwen Stefani. In 2010, Damian released the album Distant Relatives with Nas. His 4th solo album, Stony Hill, was released in August 2016 and won Best Reggae Album at the 2017 Grammys. These are all of Ziggy's proven siblings. Despite their largeness, Ziggy maintained a close and supportive relationship with each, especially his brothers. However, this bond was later tested by one of the most significant controversies to affect the Marley legacy: the shocking result. In 2014, a man came forward saying he's the oldest son and rightful heir of the legendary Rasta singer and songwriter Bob Marley. More than 33 years after Bob Marley's demise, Fabian Marley, a 46-year-old aspiring singer, also presented a DNA test that he said proved his claim. The University of the West Indies has compared Fabian's DNA with that of the legendary artist and judged them a match, Fabian's representative told the National Enquirer. Fabian said his mother, Rafi Monroe, gave birth to him on July 27, 1968, and listed his last name as Marley on his birth certificate. In an interview with the Jamaican press, he said, "I am the first son of Bob Marley. Ziggy and I were born in the same year, but of different mothers. I was born a few months before him." However, Ziggy, who many already recognize as Bob Marley's eldest son, strongly disagreed with Fabian's story. "I think Fabian might have some kind of mental issues. He definitely is not my half-brother. My father introduced me to all my brothers, whether they were by my mother or not," says Ziggy. He would never hide his sons. Never. True to Ziggy's words, a shocking reveal in 2016 proved that Fabian might have imagined things up. A series of DNA tests confirmed without a doubt that Fabian Marley had no biological connection to Bob Marley. Instead, the tests clearly showed that Fabian was the biological son of Othniel Stanford. Dr. Carl A. Reich, scientific director at Independent Forensics DNA Testing and Technologies, explained, "The DNA tests show with scientific certainty that Fabian Marley is not the half-brother of either Rohan Marley, Stephen Marley, or Robert N. Marley. In addition, similar DNA tests show the probability of Fabian Marley being the son of Othniel Stanford is 99.99%. Independent Forensics, a fully accredited and well-respected DNA testing lab in Illinois, handled the testing. For years, the Marley family insisted that Fabian was an imposter who falsely claimed to be Bob Marley's son to boost his music career. However, Fabian avoided DNA testing through an accredited lab until October 2015. His then manager, Clayton Thomas, convinced him to take the test. His mother, Miss Rafi Monroe, also denied ever telling him otherwise. She said, "This is crazy talk. I never told my son in my life that Bob Marley was his father. I don't know how he came up with this, but it is not true. It never happened. I don't know where he got this from, but no one in the family ever said this even once." Fabian's oldest sister, Sandra Stanford Walker, didn't hold back either. She said, "Something is wrong with him. This is not normal behavior. Everyone knows he is not a Marley. His family, his friends, everyone in our community knows he is not Bob Marley's son. Fabian is troubled, and we want to put an end to his lies." Although Ziggy and his family were fortunate to avoid being deeply entangled in Fabian's claims, what came next shook their world in ways they never expected. One of Ziggy's brothers, Damian Marley, took to the internet to share the most shocking news of the century. In 1978, when Cindy Breakspear gave birth to Damian, the world already knew the Marley name. However, Damian's arrival brought its own complications. His father, Bob Marley, was still married to Rita Marley. Cindy was a beauty queen, crowned Miss World in 1976. Their relationship, though passionate, unfolded in a spotlight many wouldn't envy. Damian was the youngest of the Marley children, but his place in the family was complicated. From early on, he lived with a dual identity. On one hand, he was Bob Marley's son, a living piece of reggae royalty. On the other hand, he was raised by his mother and stepfather, Tom Tavares Finson, in Stony Hill, a quiet, upscale neighborhood in Kingston. This was a far cry from Trenchtown, where his father's revolutionary sound was born. Damian once spoke about being aware of those contrasts, racial, social, cultural. "My stepfather and my little brother and sister are white Jamaicans," he said. It was interesting to grow up around that knowledge. That feeling of living between worlds stayed with him for decades. He began making music in his teens, forming the Shepherds with other children of famous Jamaican artists. However, it was clear early on that Damian wouldn't ride his brother's coattails. He was determined to find his own voice, even if it meant moving slower than his brothers, Ziggy, Stephen, and Julian, and he did. His debut album, Mr. Marley, came out in 1996 and leaned heavily into dancehall and roots reggae. It was a solid start, but it paled in comparison to what came next. By the time Welcome to Jamrock dropped in 2005, everything changed. Damian was no longer just Bob's youngest son. He was a Grammy-winning artist, a cultural force, and a masterful lyricist. The title track, with raw truth about Jamaica's street life, struck a global chord. What made the song hit harder was that it wasn't coming from someone living in the ghettos. It came from someone who understood both sides. Damian's unique upbringing shaped his view. He saw privilege, but never ignored the pain. Still, no matter how high he rose, the Marley name always hung over him. Every performance, interview, and album release carried an unspoken question of whether he was living up to his father's legacy. Meanwhile, Damian rarely leaned on his father's name to promote his work. Instead, he seemed more focused on preserving Bob's message than capitalizing on it. He once said, "Every one of my father's songs is a lesson." That deep respect for his father showed in Damian's music and actions. However, over time, people started to notice something. Damian often kept a polite distance from certain Marley family projects. While he sometimes joined his brothers on stage or supported foundation work, he mostly carved his own path. He collaborated with hip-hop artists, produced genre-blending albums, and got involved in cannabis reform and education. Questions lingered. Damian rarely spoke in detail about his personal relationship with Bob. He was only 2 years old when his father passed away. Most of what he knew came from stories, photographs, and songs. As Damian's music evolved, so did the quiet curiosity surrounding his bond with Bob Marley. Few asked directly, but the question was there, hanging in the air. Damian Marley never rushed into the spotlight. Unlike some second-generation artists who lean on their last name, Damian moved with quiet urgency. It was as if he were searching for something deeper. That search became clear in 2010, when he teamed up with Nas to create Distant Relatives, an album that pushed the boundaries of hip-hop, reggae, and African identity all at once. The collaboration surprised many at first. Nas, a rap legend from New York. Damian, a roots reggae artist from Jamaica. In an interview, Damian said the project was more than music. It was a conversation between brothers, even though he and Nas weren't related by blood. Most people read more meaning into this statement. People close to the family said that Damian had long been asking quiet questions, not out of disrespect, but out of personal curiosity. Raised away from Trenchtown, surrounded by a different class and culture, he experienced the Marley mythos through a filtered lens. For the public, Bob was a god, but for Damian, that god had always been out of reach. The more he tried to piece together his place in the family story, the more elusive the answers became. There were moments in interviews, rare moments, where Damian hinted at uncertainty. He once told a journalist that growing up with his stepfather, Tom Tavares Finson, shaped him in ways most people didn't realize. "He was a real influence in my life," Damian said. "He was there every day. He taught me things no one else could." It was a beautiful sentiment, but also a subtle reminder that the man most absent in his life was the one everyone expected him to emulate. Even in his music, the references to Bob were rare. While his brothers often performed covers of their father's classics or leaned heavily into the reggae image that made Bob famous, Damian did something different. He blurred the lines, infusing hip-hop, experimenting with Middle Eastern sounds, collaborating with politically active rappers, and pushing toward global narratives rather than family mythologies. Damian respected where he came from, but he wasn't going to let it define him completely. Then came the rumors. A former associate of the family mentioned in a podcast that Damian had once raised questions about his biological origins. At the time, it was just a strange comment passed off as idle curiosity. Then, a music journalist dug up a curious pattern. Damian had been seen less and less at family events over the past 5 years. He had skipped anniversary celebrations, legacy tours, and award shows honoring his father. One tabloid even claimed he turned down an invitation to speak at a Marley Foundation tribute because he felt disconnected from the narrative. None of this was confirmed. Regardless, the silence ended without warning. On a quiet morning in early 2025, Damian Marley posted a single statement to his official website. "Sometimes the truth comes late, but it still comes." With that, the speculation erupted into something far more real. According to reports that followed, Damian had recently undergone a private DNA test. The reports alleged that Damian's DNA showed no biological link to Bob Marley. He didn't confirm or deny the reports directly, but what he did next spoke louder than any denial could. Damian pulled out of all remaining Marley-branded projects for the year, including a global tour celebrating Bob's 80th birthday. His team issued a second statement weeks later, stating that he would redefine his path moving forward, independent of inherited titles or assumed history. It was a move that stunned fans and insiders alike. Headlines lit up with disbelief. Damian stopped using the Marley estate's promotional material. He unfollowed official Marley channels on social media. In a particularly bold move, he canceled plans to remaster his early album, Mr. Marley, which had initially been pitched as a tribute to his father's sound. If one of Bob's acknowledged children turned out not to be his by blood, what did that mean for the legacy as a whole? Fans were divided. As of now, the Marley estate has not responded. Cindy Breakspear has remained silent. Damian is still touring, still recording, and still standing on his own 2 feet. In the weeks following the alleged DNA test, the music world entered a strange limbo. Damian Marley's withdrawal from Marley branded projects didn't seem temporary. Venues quietly removed his name from Bob Marley tribute concerts. Promotional materials were edited without explanation. Even merchandise that once featured Damian's image beside his siblings vanished from store shelves and online platforms. Inside the Marley family, insiders say the mood turned tense. Some relatives, especially those close to Rita Marley, reportedly saw Damian's decision as a betrayal. They believed that, regardless of blood, Bob had accepted him, and that made him a Marley in every way that mattered. Others stayed neutral, stunned by the news, but unwilling to take sides. A few, though, expressed quiet support. Cindy Breakspear, Damian's mother, was notably absent from the conversation. Once a visible figure who spoke openly about her past with Bob, she went silent. Friends said she was shaken, not just by the results of the test, but by the emotional toll it took on her son. Damian had reportedly asked her direct questions in the lead-up to the test. While the details of those conversations remain private, it's clear something changed between them afterward. Journalists scrambled to gather any information they could. Old interviews were rewatched. Old articles were analyzed. One clip from a mid-2000s press tour resurfaced, showing Damian being asked how he coped with being Bob Marley's son. His answer at the time was short and direct. "I live my truth. I don't pretend." Despite the media frenzy, Damian didn't retreat from the public eye. He kept touring, now under his full name only. No mention of Junior Gong. He stopped performing covers of Bob's songs and removed them from his set list entirely. At one show, when a fan shouted a request for "Could You Be Loved?", Damian simply shook his head and said, "That's not my song." There were other changes too. At recent events, his visuals took a new turn. Gone were the Pan-African flags and Marley-themed backdrops. In their place are roots growing through concrete, shadows reaching for light, and masks breaking open. People close to him say he's more focused than ever. Yet for all the distance Damian has put between himself and the Marley name, the questions haven't stopped. Was the DNA test definitive? Will the estate ever respond? Does this mean Damian plans to change his name? For now, those answers remain out of reach. However, what's clear is that the silence from the estate and from his mother is deliberate. In the end, Damian Marley didn't give the world a grand explanation. That, perhaps, was the final message. The world may still call him a Marley, but Damian no longer seems bound by that name. Fans are still divided. As for the Marley legacy, it remains intact, but altered. The legend of Bob Marley is bigger than any one descendant. Damian's departure forces a question the public rarely asks. How much of legacy is blood, and how much is belief? What do you think of this recent revelation? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content like this. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.